D&D number 6, The Worth of Souls in Jesus' Name, Chapter 3. Jeff's eyes squinted as he peered through the sight of his Browning BLR tape. A gift from his boss, the rifle was a prized possession. At the flash of brown and gray, he lowered the rifle and looked off past the target he'd been aiming at. He thought he'd seen a small deer or dog or something. A human? Stuffing his Glock inside the front waistband of his jeans, he carried his rifle loosely by his side and stealthily made his way past his targets and into the woods. He stopped just past the last target and stood very still, listening. The sound he heard was human, someone trying to catch their breath. Jeff placed his rifle against a tree, pulled his gun, and moved forward. 10 feet, 20 feet. Swinging his gun around quickly, he cornered his prey. He had his gun trained on a woman who cowered behind a tree, her face, hands, and clothes covered in blood. She looked up at him through dazed eyes. He shoved his gun away into his waistband and knelt by her side. She tried inching away. Whoa, now, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you, I promise. I'm going to help you. She shook her head. Are you, who? Turning on her hands and knees, she tried to crawl away. Hold on there, I swear I'm not going to hurt you. He grabbed her by the waist and pulled her back to sit. It appeared she was about to scream, and he let go, throwing his hands in the air. See? I'm not going to hurt you. Shh, now, calm down. You're hurt. Please, let me help you. Can you tell me what happened? Why are you hiding behind this tree? You were shooting at me. Oh, no, hon, not at you. I was shooting at targets. See? He pointed out at a nearby target nailed to a tree. Big brown eyes blinked up at him, a story so tragic in their depths that it took his breath away. Oh, Lord, I know who you are. She shifted her gaze to the ground, but he took her hand, forcing her to look up at him. You're Mackenzie Daly, aren't you? She began to cry and then shook her head furiously. His brow furrowed. You're not? When she didn't answer, he touched her face gently. Okay, now. You're safe now. Shh, you're safe. I won't hurt you. His eyes scanned the woods behind her. This was Mackenzie Daly, and if she's hiding out here in the woods, there might be someone chasing her. She calmed a bit, and he took a moment to look her face over carefully. Mackenzie, I've seen your face enough over the past week to know it's you. She shook her head. Your face has been plastered all over the news. You got away from your kidnappers? They were holding you somewhere near here? He looked around, trying to figure out from which direction she'd come. He reached into his pocket for his cell phone. I have to call this in. No, she finally said. No, you can't. Please don't. Wait. The panic in her voice startled him, and he raised his eyes, quickly doing a search of the surrounding forest. Realizing there was more here than meets the eye, he put the phone away. Okay, I'm not calling, see? He said in a gentle tone, holding his hands out for her to see. I'm going to need for you to calm down so you can talk to me. Tell me why you don't want me to call and let them know that you're alive. You have to believe what I'm about to tell you, she whispered. He nodded his head. I have a feeling I will. She drew a deep breath and nodded her head. Yes, I'm Mackenzie Daly. He nodded. So far, so good. My stepfather, she began, but stopped as the tears came again. Talman Daly, yes, Jeff urged. It was him. What was him? He was the one who ordered those men to take me. Kneeling silently beside her, Jeff blew out a breath as his trained mind took in the full meaning of what she was telling him. He repeated the words back to her to make sure he had it right. Your stepfather, Senator Daly, ordered men to kidnap you and hold you hostage. She nodded. But not just hold me hostage. They had orders to kill me. How do you know this? Did they tell you? Yes. Well, one of them did. They've been waiting on the orders to kill me. It was supposed to be today, but She stopped and moaned at the vision of what had occurred as the vision of what had occurred ran through her brain. You got away? She nodded. Yes. And so he can't know. He cut her off. I understand. He can't know you've escaped. He can't know you're alive or he'll come after you. He can't know you're alive until the authorities are able to put a case together against him." She nodded again, looking up into his face, her brow furrowed. "You believe me?" He nodded. "Yes, I believe you." "Just like that?" He smiled. "Well, someone in your condition usually doesn't think up elaborate lies to tell." Relieved, she drew a deep breath and offered a small smile. I thought my biggest problem would be to get someone to believe me. Who are you? Are you a cop?" "No, much better. My name is Jeff Davis. I'm a security agent for Ameritech Security." His eyes scanned the forest again. "Do you think someone followed you?" Her eyes opened wide. "No! Did you hear someone?" She started to scramble away again. Laying a hand on her shoulder, he stopped her. "No, I'm just trying to ascertain the situation. You're safe with me, I promise. Mackenzie, where were they holding you, and do they know you've escaped?" Raising a trembling, bloody hand, she pointed north. "There's a cabin that way. I'm not sure how far I've run. The only place I know of in that direction is an old hunter's cabin, about 3 miles. I think that's it. How many men, and are they armed?" Her eyes filled. "There were two. Richard, he shot Butch." Her body began to shake and her teeth to chatter. And then he tried to, I think I killed him." Jeff took her face in his hands and tilted it up toward him. "You're doing real good, Mackenzie, real good. How did you kill him, sweetie? Did you shoot him?" She shook her head. Slowly her eyes turned to look down at her right hand. She held her fist out to him. "Oh, boy," Jeff uttered softly. He gripped her tightly around the wrist. "I want you to open your fist, okay? Go slow. Open. That's it." He examined the long, sharp shard of glass, its base deeply embedded in her palm. Her body began shaking violently. Quickly, before she had time to resist, he removed the glass from her hand. He took off his T-shirt and used it to wrap the wound tightly. "Mackenzie, you're going into shock. We need to get you inside." Her teeth chattering, she nodded. "Are you hurt anywhere else?" She shook her head and then changed direction. I think I sprained my ankle." "Okay, we can deal with that." He rose and reached down for her. "Hold on around my neck," he instructed. She did as he said, flinching slightly as he lifted her from the ground as if she weighed nothing. How lucky, she thought, that she'd run into this knight in shining armor. How unlikely. She stiffened. It was unlikely. What if he also worked for her father? What if he was taking her to him right now? She panicked suddenly and tried to push away from him, tried to get down. He stopped, looked behind him, and then down at her. "What's wrong? Did you see something?" She looked deep into his eyes. What are you doing out here?" He understood and set her down, took his wallet out of his pocket, showed her his security ID. "I don't know what else to do to convince you that I'm one of the good guys, except if I worked for your father, I'd go ahead and kill you right now, wouldn't I?" She blinked up at him, tears welling in her eyes and running over her cheeks. "I guess so. I don't know. Mackenzie, look at me. Trust me. I'm going to help you. I own this property. I bought it a few years ago, and I came up here to relax and shoot." Her entire body trembled. I don't know what to do." She gave a soft moan before she collapsed. He caught her, lifted her back into his arms, and walked toward the house. "I swear to you, you are safe with me," he said as he walked. Something in his voice, the conviction maybe, it got to her. "I'm sorry for doubting you," she whispered. "I think I do trust you." Everything seemed blurry, foggy, and as he carried her, the temptation to rest her head was too great, and she laid it on his shoulder. Safe. She was safe. She nestled her face into the crook of his neck, listening to his breath as he walked, and it seemed to give her amazing comfort. He smelled so good, clean. Pressing her nose against his skin, she breathed deeply. "I'm very lucky," she mumbled against his neck. "Why is that?" he asked. "The first person I come across after I get away is someone who can actually help me. Not a frantic housewife or some backwoods hunter or a by-the-book sheriff or anyone else. I find you, I mean, the company you work for I've heard of Ameritech. You guys are kind of like FBI, right? Close enough, he said, only we're a private company. He stopped by the tree to grab up his rifle. She gasped when he bent over, her hands reaching out in startled reflex. It's okay, he murmured. I've got you. Her eyes filled again at the sound of his masculine voice, this time in gratitude that she was in the arms of one so capable. Jeff, breathing hard by the time he got to the back deck, entered the house and took her immediately to the bedroom. Setting her down gently on the bed, he spoke quietly. Mackenzie, I have a lot I have to do. We can't stay here. I have to get stuff in the truck and make some arrangements, and I'm going to have to leave you here for a little while. You rest while I get everything done, and then we'll leave, okay? She swallowed hard, looking down at her bloody clothing. Can I use your shower? Are you sure you're up to it? She nodded. I feel better already, and I've stopped shaking. Okay, hold on. He pulled his phone from his pocket and snapped off several shots of her, then placed the phone on the dresser, opened a drawer and pulled out a t-shirt and a pair of his boxers and placed them on the dresser. After your shower, you can put these on. We'll get you some clothes later today. She nodded. Next, he pulled out a dark brown t-shirt and pulled it over his own head. Do you know how to fire a gun? She shook her head. It's easy, really. He pulled the Glock from his waistband and gave her a quick lesson. I'm going to leave this with you just in case. Anyone but me comes through this door, you fire. Got it? Eyes wide, she nodded her head. Eyeing her hand wrapped in his t-shirt, he frowned. Are you going to be able to get undressed and shower with your hand the way it is? She nodded again. He doubted it. It was going to hurt like heck, but it's not like she was going to let him undress her and wash her. Silently reprimanding himself for even thinking that, he shook his head to clear it of the images. The poor kid had been through hell. In his own defense, he could blame his male reaction to her on the way she'd snuggled her face up against his throat as he'd carried her. Her breath on his skin, her lips moving against him as she spoke. The intimacy of it, he admitted it got to him. He blew out a breath. Don't leave this room until I get back. She nodded again, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. He touched her shoulder and made her look at him. Listen to me, Mackenzie. I may be gone a while, so don't get worried. She nodded. I understand, she said softly. He started to leave. Jeff? He stopped and turned, brow raised in question. Thank you. He nodded and smiled. I'm just glad I was here. He picked up his phone and left the room, then knocked on the door. Mackenzie, lock the door, he called. He stood there until he heard the click, and then he took off. He would have to deal only in cash, so he would need money, and he would need an untraceable car. All of that would be no problem as soon as he called his boss, Jason Lee. In order to do that, he needed to get a disposable phone. Talman Daly, being a senator, means he is a powerful man. Once Daly knows Mackenzie survived her ordeal and is gone, he'll have a manhunt out, and they'll make their way to Jeff's house pretty fast. They'll find out he owns the place and trace him to Ameritech, and Jason will deny knowing where he is. But Daly is powerful enough to get Jason's phone records, which he would do, looking for a call from Jeff, but there won't be one. Hopefully, it will be several hours before Daly sends someone to the cabin to find out why his thugs haven't checked in with him. Why did he want his own daughter dead? Though she's not his flesh and blood daughter, is she? She's his adopted child, his stepchild. Jeff blew out a pensive breath. He would have plenty of time to talk to the girl later. Right now, he had to get going. It was over an hour later when he knocked on the bedroom door. When she didn't answer, he called out to her. A few seconds later, she opened the door, the gun in her hand. Removing it from her quickly, he placed it on the dresser. He looked her over. She was pale, but clean. Her straight brown tresses were almost dry. She was a looker. The bruise on her cheek didn't take away from her beauty, nor did his black Jack Daniels t-shirt, which was long enough to completely cover the boxers she wore. She had on some Nike shoes that were spattered with blood, but no socks. You okay? He asked. I think so, she answered. He gathered her discarded clothing. Come into the kitchen. Following him obediently, she glanced around the sparse home. Not much to it. There was a chair by the sink in the kitchen, and he motioned her into it. Her eyes rose to his in question. We're not going to be able to get you to a doctor anytime soon, so I'm going to have to disinfect that cut on your hand and bandage it up the best I can. He took her hand and held it over the sink as he examined it. Man, that is deep, he muttered. He looked up at her. This is going to hurt, and I'm sorry about that. It's okay, she murmured. She grimaced as he washed the cut under warm water. Next, he poured vodka over her hand, gripping her wrist tighter when she instinctively tried to pull it back. He watched her face as she scrunched it up and started blowing out big puffs of air. She winced, moaned a little, and then went silent. The worst part is over. No, it isn't. It's still burning. He smiled. It'll ease up some soon, he said as he leaned close and placed a row of butterfly bandages along her palm. Next, he wrapped her hand with gauze, then taped it securely. We'll look at it again later to make sure it doesn't get infected. You sure come prepared, Mickey said, motioning to all the first aid supplies. He shrugged. Yeah, I'm a regular Boy Scout, huh? Okay, we have to get going, he said as he gathered up the supplies, including the vodka, into a plastic grocery bag. He took another grocery bag and placed her bloody clothing in it and tied it securely. Come back to the bedroom again for just a second. Mickey followed him back, still slightly limping, and sat on the bed while he threw everything into a duffel bag, including more guns and the bag of medical supplies. And finally he picked up the gun he'd loaned her, checked it over, and placed it in the front pocket of the duffel. She noticed he had another one in a holster strapped to his chest, and next he grabbed the 2 pillows from the bed and held them out to her. You hold these. Silently, she wrapped her arms around the offered pillows and hugged them to her body. Jeff pulled the comforter and top sheet from the bed and threw them over his shoulder and nodded at her. Let's go, he said. Wrapping his hand around her arm to allow her to take some weight off her ankle, he ushered her out of the room. Opening the passenger side door, Jeff threw the duffel and bedclothes he carried into the back seat of the brand-new F-150 and then took the pillows from Mackenzie and stuffed them over the console between the 2 front seats to make it more like one long seat, easier for her to lie down to rest. Be right back, he said as he ran back inside to do a sweep of the house and back deck area. He didn't have time to put his tools away, and sighing, he ran back to the truck. Within seconds, they were speeding down the gravel road. Jeff glanced over at the quiet girl who was obviously still dazed from all that had happened. He'd been to the cabin and taken pictures. The man she'd killed had a huge jagged hole ripped in his neck. His blood was everywhere. It was apparent he'd been on top of her when she cut him, since there was an outline in blood of her upper body on the sheet. The thought of what she'd been through made him wish the guy wasn't dead just so he could have the pleasure of killing him. Instead, she'd been the one to kill him, and that was going to be a hard thing for her to deal with. Really hard. Mackenzie looked over at him and gave a tentative smile. You okay? He asked. Nodding her head, she bit her lower lip. This gravel road seems so long. Last time I was on it, I couldn't see it. I was on the floor of the van. We'd already driven for so long, and the whole time they had me tied up and gagged, I thought my bladder was going to burst. And when we hit the gravel road, I remember thinking that we were finally at our destination, and any minute now they would let me use the bathroom. But it was a lot longer before we finally stopped. Yeah, it's actually 10 miles. I'm sorry you were so mistreated. So tell me about the van. Do you remember what it looked like? It was big and black, with a side door that opened wide. No windows in the back. Do you know what they did with it? Brow furrowed, she looked at him. They? The guys at the cabin, what did they do with the van? It wasn't there. You went to the cabin? She asked, her voice shrill, her chin trembling. I had to see what was there before anyone tampered with the evidence. Was he dead? Yes. She swallowed hard, placed her hand down on the seat beside her as if to hold herself in her seat. Jeff reached over and placed his hand on top of hers. You did what you had to do, Mackenzie. What you did, it saved your life, and that's a very good thing. She turned her hand over and squeezed his hard. Thank you. Mackenzie, Mickey. Excuse me? My name, people, my friends, they usually call me Mickey. Okay then, Mickey it is. He paused for only a second. So, Mickey, do you know what happened to the van? There was another man driving. He dropped us off and left. I never saw him, but I heard his voice, and it sounded familiar. I couldn't place it, though. If he dropped you off and left, that means this guy could be hanging out close enough to get here in a hurry if he needed to. As if saying the words made it happen, they saw the dust and heard the gravel crunching of an approaching vehicle. Mickey watched as Jeff quickly unbuckled the shoulder holster he wore and pulled it off, placing it on the floorboard. He drew the gun and placed it between his knees. Lie down, Jeff ordered. She was moving too slow for him, so he grabbed her head and shoved it down on the pillows he'd placed over the console. Oh no, oh no, oh no, she uttered, her voice tight with fear. Softly he placed his hand on her head. Shh, now, you're safe with me. And looky there, it's a black van. No, oh no, she squealed. Her hand grabbed his thigh, her nails dug in. He patted her head. Stay very quiet. Jeff slowed the truck. What are you doing? Mickey shrieked, obviously panicked. I'm going to talk to him. No! Oh, God, please, no. Her hand gripped his leg in stark terror. Shh, Mickey, you're safe. Just stay calm down. Just stay down. Jeff hit the button, and his window automatically lowered. He waved his hand out the window. The van slowed beside him. Hey, buddy, Jeff said, his voice slow and friendly. The man in the van only rolled his eyes. You looking for a dog? No, I'm not looking for a dog, the man grumbled. Shame, 'cause I found one. She looks like she's part golden retriever. Gorgeous breed. I got her tied up back at the house. Figured the owner will come looking for her sooner or later. It'd be a shame to let a dog that pretty go missing, you know what I mean? I don't think she's a purebred, got a little something else in her. I don't know if our dog went missing, my kid would have a fit. I'm sure I wouldn't see a moment's peace until I got that dog back where it belongs. I've driven all around this darn lake, asking folks if they're missing their dog, but I haven't lost a damn dog. Jeff pretended the gruffness went right over his head. Okay, well, here. Let me see if I can find something to write with. Yeah, here we go. He scribbled down a phone number. If you don't mind, if you come across someone who's missing their dog, just give me a call. The man jerked the paper out of Jeff's hand and took off. Have a nice day, Jeff mumbled sarcastically. He watched the van leave and got the tag number. The driver appeared to be alone, he thought. He could take him easy enough. Rolling his window up, he gunned the engine, jerked the steering wheel, and whipped a U-turn. Mickey's head popped up. What are you doing? She shrieked. I'm going after him. No, please, no, she cried. It's okay. He's alone. I can take him right now. Oh, no, please don't do this, please. The terror took over. Throwing herself against the passenger door, she jerked the handle. The door flew open, and she prepared to jump. Damn it, Jeff cursed as he slammed on the brakes. Reaching across the seat, he grabbed her and pulled her back toward him. She fought him, arms flailing, fists flying. Holding her firm, he pushed her head against his chest and held her fast with the other arm. Okay, I won't go after him. Shh, it's okay. You're safe. I won't go after him. Mickey, stop fighting. We won't go after him. I promise. We'll leave, okay? We'll take off right now. It took a minute before his words got through to her brain and she stopped fighting and began to calm. She was crying hysterically, but she didn't care. She felt no shame and she didn't even try to stop. Wiggling her head closer into the crook of his neck, she breathed deep. There was something about the smell of him, the strength of him that had a tranquilizing effect on her. Her heartbeat slowed and the tears eased. His hands cupped her face and pulled her away from his chest so he could look at her. Better? Sniffing, she nodded. Please don't go after him, she whimpered. Okay, I won't. Listen to me. We're going to leave right now. Put your seatbelt on and promise me you won't try to jump out of the truck again. She sat back in her seat and pulled the strap across her and clicked it in place and drew a deep breath. I promise. As long as you go in the right direction, she said in a tiny voice. Jeff made another U-turn and headed out. The gravel road finally ended and they headed north. He needed to get to a town where he could buy a prepaid phone. His mind went over everything he had to do. Her soft voice broke into his thoughts. Where are we? We're near Honey Lake. Where's that? Wow, I'm sorry, Mickey. You have no idea where you are, do you? You're in California. We're headed to a town called Susanville. There's a Walmart there. I need to get some things for you and a phone for me. And then we're headed to Red Bluff, which is about 2 more hours. There's literally hundreds of motels there, and we'll find an obscure place to hold up until I hear from my boss. Your boss? Jason Lee. He's the head of Ameritech Security. He'll be able to help you. But how do you know he won't tell anyone I'm alive? He won't. Trust me. What he will do is launch a covert investigation on Daly. He'll expose him, and then you'll be safe. I have faith in Jason. Her pensive expressions told him she wasn't as sure as he was. She said nothing more, only turned her head and stared straight ahead. Jeff's eyes kept wandering over to her, catching glimpses of sleek legs, a turned-up nose, a flawless complexion, and a sweet mouth. Her hair and eyes were almost the same color, a rich, shiny brown. He found himself wanting to touch that hair and look into those eyes. Shaking his head, he forced his mind back to business. He thought of the cabin and what the van driver would be looking at in a few minutes. It was a hideous scene. Blood everywhere. Bloody footprints leading out of the only entrance and into the woods straight toward his house. It wouldn't take them long to figure out that she'd come to his house and that he'd left in a hurry. A few phone calls later, they'd know who she was. They'd know who she was with, and they'd try to find them. He was going to make sure that didn't happen. As they approached Susanville, Jeff realized it would be very easy for someone to recognize Mackenzie Daly, who hadn't spoken since they'd hit the highway. Jeff cleared his throat, and she immediately looked over at him. Do you think you can reach in the back there and grab that Dodgers cap in that black bag? Without speaking, she did as asked and handed it to him. He shook his head. No, it's for you. I need you to put all your hair up inside the hat. We don't want anyone to recognize you. And here, he leaned over and pulled a pair of sunglasses out of the glove compartment. Put these on. She arranged the hat, then put on the glasses. How do I look? She asked, falling into a playful act, which gave a brief glimpse of her personality when she's not under duress. Jeff smiled. It'll have to do for now. A few minutes later, he pulled into the Walmart parking lot and took a parking space near the back of one of the middle rows. Turning to Mickey, he realized she was about to panic again. He took her hands. I'm not going to be very long at all. You do not get out of the truck. She nodded, her eyes wide. He brushed his hand over her cheek, a worried frown on his face. You look like you're about to pass out. I'm okay, she said, offering a tiny smile. He didn't buy it, though, because her chest heaved with each breath she took. Try to stay calm. Slow your breathing. What if he comes back this way, looking for you? The guy in the van? We could have turned 3 different ways off that road. He'll assume we headed south toward L.A. He certainly won't think that we decided to go on a shopping trip to Wally World. Look, Mickey, I'll just be a minute, I promise. Stay down and take this. He reached in the bag and pulled out the same gun he'd given her earlier. You remember how to use it? She nodded. I think so. He showed her again. Mickey took a huge breath. Okay, just go, but please, hurry back. He touched her face. I'll hurry. She watched him jog the length of the parking lot and disappear inside. Setting the gun down on the seat next to her, she tried to get her racing heart to slow down. Why she was being such a wimp, she didn't know. She admitted she was terrified, maybe even more now that she was free than before. The thought of them recapturing her. Her stomach turned over. It seemed Jeff had been gone forever when she saw the van. Sucking in a horrified breath, she threw herself down into the floorboard of the truck and grabbed the gun and began to whimper. Oh, no, 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 she cried. I knew this was going to happen. Oh, please, Jeff, where are you? Then she discovered a new problem. From her perspective, down on the floorboard of Jeff's truck, she realized she couldn't see what was happening. Was the van still coming toward her? Rising slowly, she peeked up over the dash ever so slightly. Oh, no, he must have seen Jeff's truck because he was headed straight for her. Ducking back down, she heard the sound of the van's engine as it approached and knew it had pulled into the space just opposite, nose to nose. Closing her eyes, she wondered if she should shoot first or wait for him to try to grab her. Or maybe he wouldn't grab her. Maybe he would simply point a gun through the window and kill her right now and get it over with so there would be no more mistakes. Her heart pounded. There was a rushing sound in her ears as she waited for him to appear, her eyes shifting from the driver's side window to the passenger side window, expecting him at any second. She couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand hiding there like a sitting duck. She couldn't stand being trapped, pinned down like she had been all week, like she had been just a few short hours ago this very day. She had to do something. Only what? Run? She had to run. She needed to get out of the car and run. Keeping her head low, she eased her body from the floorboard and onto the seat, moved to the driver's side door, unlocked it, counted to 3, threw the door open, and ran toward the store as fast as she could go. Jeff saw her when she jumped out of the truck, but she obviously didn't see him, since she was running toward the store as fast as her bad ankle would allow. He stepped in front of her and scooped her up. She screamed. "It's me," he said quickly. "It's me, honey. Shh, now. I'm back." Her arms were around his neck, squeezing until he could barely get his breath. Her legs wrapped around his waist. He held her tight. To onlookers, it would probably look like she'd been so happy to see him she'd run into his arms. To him, she was more like a terrified puppy clinging to its owner. "He's here. We have to go," she sobbed. "Who's here?" "The van. He pulled up right in front of us. Please, Jeff. We have to run." Jeff's eyes took in the truck and the van parked in front. He sighed. "Listen to me, Mickey. The van parked in front of the truck is dark blue with white accents down the side, and it's a woman with a kid. See? She's putting her kid in a stroller right next to the van." Without letting go of her, he turned around so that she could see what he saw. "Okay?" he asked. I could have sworn." She never finished. She only laid her head on his shoulder and began to cry. He held her tight as he walked to the truck. Her entire body trembled, and he realized she was still in shock. He had to get her calm. Clumsily opening the passenger side door, he sat her down on the seat and tossed his bags with the purchases he'd made over onto his seat. Pulling the comforter from the back, he wrapped it around her shoulders, then rubbed her back briskly. She looked up at him, tears making tracks down her cheeks. He used his thumbs to wipe at them. "Doing better?" he asked. "I must be losing my mind," she whispered. "No, you're having a normal reaction to what's happened to you." He reached into the back seat and pulled the bottle of vodka out of the medical bag. "I want you to take 2 good belts, okay?" he said, holding the bottle up to her lips. She took a gulp and made a face. "Yuck! That stuff tastes terrible by itself," she said, scrunching up her face. Jeff smiled at her. "Are you kidding me? This is the good stuff." "One more time," he urged. She obeyed and handed him the bottle. He put the good stuff away and reached down into the floorboard in front of her feet and retrieved his gun and had her swing her feet inside the truck and securely closed her door. Mickey kept her eyes on him as he rounded the truck and opened his door. He pulled a packaged cell phone from one of the bags and tossed the rest of the bags into the back. Pulling a knife, he quickly opened the package, activated the phone, got in the truck, and started down the road. Jeff punched in the number and hit send. "Yes?" "Jason, it's Jeff. We have a situation. Get to a clean phone and call me." He hung up and looked over at her. Mickey listened as he spoke, amazed at the difference in his voice between the times he'd spoken to her so kindly and the all business in his tone now. His words were short and to the point. "How long do you think it will take for him to call you back?" she asked. "A minute or 2. He looked her over. "Are you hungry?" She shook her head. "Well, if you get hungry, I bought some junk food. It's in one of those bags in the back. We need to stay on the road until we get to Red Bluff." "Thanks, but I don't think I could eat." He patted the pillows beside him. "Then lie down and sleep. It will help the time to go by faster." "I don't think I can sleep either." "Okay. You don't have to sleep, but it might be a good idea for you to lie down anyway." Unbuckling her belt, she complied, snuggling down into the pillows. Her eyes immediately drifted shut. They snapped back open the next second when Jeff's phone went off. Rolling onto her back, she watched him from where she lay. He had a strong jaw, at least he did from this angle. He was movie star handsome in a rugged sort of way, she thought. a cross maybe between Brad Pitt and G.I. Joe. His blonde hair was streaked with sunlight, like he spent a lot of time on the beach, although his eyelashes, which were very long, were black in color. His eyes were hard to tell from this angle, possibly hazel. She stopped her inspection when she heard him say her name into the phone and remembered that she wanted to hear this conversation. No, I'm not kidding. She's lying on the seat of my truck as we speak. I don't have the whole story yet. I had to move quickly, and she's been too shocky to talk, but we can debrief her tonight when we stop. Nutshell, she believes it was her stepfather who had her kidnapped. Yeah, that's pretty easy to see the benefits for him in that area. He held her in a cabin near my lake property. She got away. I found her in the woods near my house. She's pretty shaken up. She had to kill one guy to get away, and the scene was pretty bad. Yeah, I got pics. I stopped the driver of the van involved in the snatch. I couldn't take him because Mackenzie freaked out on me. Tag number is KLM9935. I thought you'd say Red Bluff. I'm already headed there. Yes, car and money. And we'll need a wig. Clothes for her. I need some more ammo just in case. Got it. I intend to take very good care of her. One more thing. Put a trace on your private line. I gave the driver of the van your number to call in case he came across someone who lost a dog. He'll put two and two together eventually and realize the guy he spoke to is the one who has Mackenzie and that I gave him my number because I want a deal. Yep. Later. He pushed a button and glanced down at her. I feel much better now that we have that out of the way. He's going to help? He smiled. There was never any question of that. A case like this, I'm sure he's in the zone. Ameritech is like renting your own FBI/CIA. Jason used to consult for the FBI and also for the military. He knows what's up. He implemented a lot of the military special ops training. He decided to open his own company instead of being caught up in government red tape. And he uses the newest, hottest technology. He trains his agents thoroughly. He's very much into righting wrongs. An equalizer, so to speak. An equalizer, that's exactly what I need. She looked up at him from where she lay on the car seat. And you're an agent? Yes. So what were you doing up at the lake? Taking a vacation. She frowned. I'm sorry. He smiled. For what? For ruining my vacation? I think taking care of you is a little more important. Smiling, her eyes drifted shut again. Thank you. She said she couldn't sleep, but he knew if she just let her body relax for a second, she'd be gone. The after effect of an extreme adrenaline rush is complete exhaustion. Looking down at her as she floated off to sleep, his heart stuttered. Man, she was lovely. She lay on her back, her chest rising and falling with each breath. He let his hand reach down and touch her face. She sighed and turned onto her side, causing his hand to slide down her back. He kept it there while he drove. Thinking of the actions Jason would be taking gave him a little satisfaction. Talman Daly, the SOB, would kill his own family, his wife's flesh and blood, while he is revered as a United States Senator. Jeff hoped he would get a shot at the guy. He'd driven an hour when she stirred, rose up and laid her head on his thigh instead of on the pillows beside his leg. He swallowed hard. He'd had the AC cranked up pretty good, yet suddenly there were beads of perspiration popping out on his forehead. Gripping the steering wheel with both hands, he tried not to think about it, and then she stretched and tried to burrow her hand up underneath him, and he grabbed it quickly and placed it on his knee and covered it with his hand to hold it there. And that is the end of chapter 3.